Hey everybody, how are you doing? I hope wonderful today. Today I'd like to show you how to paint this fabulous, mystical, glitterific rainbow mane unicorn. I did this, almost over a year back, but it was the first time we really used complex annotations and it kind of messed up the video, and I've been wanting to recreate this for you so that you can paint this easily and it wasn't glitchy. I hope you love him, but really what I hope is that if you are a fabulous magical creature, if you are terrific, if you are amazing, I really want to dedicate this painting to you, because being authentic and being who you really are for yourself, no matter how it makes anybody else feel, is maybe the most courageous, amazing thing that you can do. And I know, as the resident odd person in my family, that I think it's good for them. I think it's good. You got to have somebody special and spectacular and glitterific in your life. It helps you grow, and the universe needs you, and the planet needs you. So for all you unicorns, this painting is for you. There are materials in the description as well as a traceable, because of course, you know, I don't believe that you have to draw to be able to paint. There's links, more information, all kinds of help. You can go to TheArtSherpa.com to get more information. It's all hidden down there where I like to hide things. If you think this is fun and this is fantastic, go ahead and hit that subscribe button so I can keep making these videos. I'm still going to do it even if you don't subscribe, so don't feel worried, like under that much pressure, because I would more that you be a unicorn than subscribe. You know how this works on YouTube, right? And if you just found me, gosh, this is going to be a lot of fun for you. I'm going to totally tell you how to do this painting, every part of it. So get your paint, get your brushes, and come back and meet me at the easel right now. Let's get started with this fun project. So how this is going to work, if you've never ever tried this before, is that I'm just going to explain to you every part of what I'm doing and why I'm doing it and what I'm using, so that you can do this at home too, following along. Now I'm going to show you how to sketch in this fabulous unicorn, but, and this is super important, because a lot of people think that you have to be able to draw to be an artist, but that's actually not true. Drawing is an art skill. There's a lot of awesome art skills. You can decide to take it up, or you might not ever take it up. I always try to provide a traceable now for my projects so that you have a no draw option, and that way that's not a barrier to your creativity, because the most important thing is that you get to paint and have a lot of fun and start to relax and be a little bit easy and soft about your life. Now, 16 by 20 canvas here, pre-adjusted. I get these in packs, but you could do it on acrylic paper for painting. You could do it on acrylic board. You could even probably get away with a very heavy multimedia paper. But I'm going to tell you what I'm using, which is the 16 by 20 canvas. Over here on my palette, I have the rainbow. If it's been a while since you have been familiarized with the rainbow, it's going to go red, yellow. There would normally be an orange here, but these two are going to mix and make an orange. Green, blue, purple, white. This is yellow oxide. This is black. And this is acrylic glazing liquid. This helps me because my studio is very hot and dry. I mean, really dry. So I need some help to keep my paint from drying out really quickly. If your paint is drying out really quickly, I could totally recommend that product to help slow it down. The exact colors today that I'm using are cad red hue, cad yellow hue, phthalo green, phthalo blue, dioxazine purple, titanium white, yellow oxide, Mars black in a soft body paint, and glazing liquid. Because you use other materials? Yeah, totally. This is a completely free-spirited project. Don't let there be any limitations on what you're doing. I'm just sharing with you exactly what I'm doing so that there's full transparency in the creative process. I'm going to sketch my fabulous Mr. Fabulosity unicorn on the canvas and talk to you about how I do that. So if you've been really trying to draw a unicorn, you can do that at home. The first thing is right in the center of the canvas is the main part of his head. So if I were just sketching him in, I could do a nice round circle. And coming off that circle, I could do the arc of his neck. See how it is kind of like a rainbow? It curves like a rainbow. Right here to the back of his circle, right here, I have an inward arc. Comes in, comes in, comes in, and then goes out. I'm using chalk pencil, so that when I paint over it, this kind of disappears into my paint. If I were going to use a graphite pencil, oh, it would bleed all into my paint, and that might irritate me. Now, right off the head, I'm going to come in. I'm going to make him a little bit Arabian. This is a breed of horse, so I'm going to addition his nose. But he's not. He's a unicorn. Addition his nose, and he's super, super fabulous. Or perhaps it's she. Scoop in, go inward, and then outward for the little lip. I'm going to curve in and down. See how I go down like that for the mouth? Then another little lip. His chinny chin comes out like this. In behind it on the little jawbone, and then it comes back out to join the jaw. The nose kind of reminds me a little bit of a number 6. See how it comes in this side and then goes around and curls around? Right here in the center of his jaw is his eye. And the real important thing about the horse's eye is first I have this arced line that comes up. I'm going to make a little sort of, it's not actually a lash, but you can think of it that way. And then I'm going to do an opening right here. This reminds me a bit in their shape of a triangle. I'm going to curve this around, and then I know I'm going to have tear duct here. Right here is a socket. This would be in his little skull. If I take his jawbone up like this, and I go straight up from that, I know I'm going to have an ear, which will be right here. I may end up painting that out, but I just want you to know where it goes in. And I like to curve my ears so that they're alert. See how I curved an alert ear? Now, I don't know about you. Sometimes I have trouble with straight lines. Do you have trouble with straight lines? They can be tricky. So I used a ruler when I pre-sketched in my unicorn. I'm going to use my brush here, though, which is also, believe it or not, a straight line to reinforce that. And that'll help guide me on where I'm going to do the horn. And the horn is going to be a little wider at the base here than at the tip. See how I do that? A little wider at the base than at the tip. And that gives me the basic placement of where my fabulous unicorn is going to be. And I hope you're feeling fabulous in your painting. I'm going to get a number 10 bright for acrylic painting. A bright is a nice square brush. The filaments are a little bit shorter than a flat. And this particular one, I wouldn't want to put on makeup with it. It's pretty stiff. This is a Simply Simmons, but there's a lot of brushes with this type of texture to it. So, you know, just feel them and make sure that it's going to be not too soft to paint with. The next thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to moisten my brush, but I'm going to take off this extra water. See me doing that? If you're at home, be sure and take off the extra water, because if your brush is too wet, well, then it's not going to be covering the canvas very well. I'm going to pull out the white like this. See how it's on a bead on my brush? And pull out the blue. And I'm going to kind of work them together to make a sky blue. I might even grab a little more white. And they're all just there on the edge. They're not traveling up my brush. I'm pulling out my glazing medium. But that's because I've got a very, very warm, dry studio. And I'm going back and forth on the flat. You can see that just going back and forth. Uh-oh, what happens when I get to him? Well, I'm going to switch to the edge of my bristles here and use them to kind of paint around. And then back to my flat to work in that paint. Now, I'm running out. You can kind of see here it's running out of paint. So I got to go back and get some more paint. So I'm going to pull a little bit out from my blue. Notice I'm not mixing things together in big areas, pulling a little bit out at a time. There, right on the ends, and pulling out some of this white. Doesn't take a lot of blue. It does not take a lot of blue to tint the white. I'm getting that glazing medium for me. The two things that my glazing liquid does is it slows down the drying time of my paint, which I really sometimes need. I don't know if you do at home, but I do. And it allows me to just tint the glaze with a color if I ever wanted to do that. And that's a pretty good set of things to do. So I'm switching on the flat and going back and forth, kind of making this blue sky color. And everything around him is going to be this color. Okay? It's not going to have an ombre, which means it's not going to be darker at the top and get lighter at the bottom. It's going to be pretty uniformly this color. Bright sky that he's standing in front of. Getting some more and some more of this. Pulling out the glazing. And just making sure that I paint all the area outside of what I drew in with this blue. Going on the edge of my brush if I want a sharp line. So I go right on the edge there. And then I switch to this to get this nice little shape in. You can use it like this here too. See, I can go around. I'm using my brush to work for me. And that really, really helps me. What if I made a boo-boo? What if I put some blue in his ear? I'll show you later how I fix that. You don't have to worry about that. You don't have to be too particular all the time in acrylic painting because it's super forgiving. That's what I love about it. I love acrylic paint because it's very forgiving. Just painting that all in very quickly for me, but you paint at your own pace. Notice I'm more concerned about covering the canvas kind of uniformly than I am at this stage about the brushstroke direction. But you know, if you want to have it all be one way, you can always go back in and do that. Let's get some more paint. Super fun. This is a really fun project to do. And whether you are young or young at heart, I think unicorns are a very good thing to paint. I think believing in magical creatures is a very important life skill. I do. Keeps you optimistic about your world. And I like being optimistic about my world. I want to believe in places that are magical and amazing, where adventures happen to regular people. Makes me happy. That's why I like reading books or listening to music or painting pictures. And when you paint a picture, that becomes part of your world. So you can see how I'm just working around that. Now, something that can happen if you are a new painter, you might have a brush that isn't giving you a nice line, right? It's not doing a nice job for you. If you find you're working a brush and you just really feel like you're struggling through every part of the painting, experiment with changing brushes. I'm just smoothing this over right here. You see how I'm smoothing this out? Giving this a nice line. You can always do that. Like if I'm using a brush that makes you very uncomfortable or another art teacher is anywhere, it's okay to switch brushes because this is you painting at home. I'm painting with you and we're having this experience together, but you still have to paint your unicorn. So if this brush is giving you grief, switch to a brush you enjoy using. I'm going to keep pulling this blue out. You can just see how I'm constantly working. Now the paint has started to bleed up into the ferrule, but not thickly. If it was thick, I would wipe off my brush on a towel and then rinse it out and start over again. So I'm pulling this out, and grabbing some of this. And we're going to go around the rest of his face. You can see I'm using the sharpness of the brush, even on the flat here, to trace around his little chinny chin. Don't ever let someone tell you that tracing is cheating in art. People will say that sometimes. They'll try to tell you what is cheating and what is not cheating, what is cool, what is not cool, what is worth your time and attention and what isn't. And that's crazy. The only person that can decide that is you. They just want to be in charge of you. And in your art, the good news is that you are entirely in charge. Now, something I want to show you is I'm pulling out my paint. I'm going to maybe do this in the beginning. Something sometimes happens to new people is they get going like this. See how I'm doing here? You don't want to do this because look at what's happening. It's really going up my brush, isn't it? It could get way up here. I could get too much going on my brush and then it would be really hard to paint with. And that's what I mean if you get too much paint on your brush. Take it to a towel wipe it off, and then reload again. Let me clean up my brush. All right, I've wiped it off. I've kind of got that extra paint off, and I'm going to come here and pull out the rest of this. Another thing you're going to notice, look how much of my white got used with what happened there. A lot of it did, and the color mixture got away from me, and a lot of stuff got frustrating. So that could happen to you. And if you do, just back up a little bit, wipe your brush, wash it off, and start over. Just something that might be happening to you. Another thing is if you're trying to be economical with your art supplies, paint management, even more than buying less expensive paints, will help you save money. Knowing how to manage the paint on your palette. See how that's made it very hard for me to maintain that color I've been maintaining very easily all along? I'm just blending these two together so it's not jarring for the thumbnail later. You can see already that's worked out because it's picture in picture for you, but right now I don't actually know what my finished painting is going to look like. Isn't that interesting? I think it's sort of fun because it's how we make the videos. Breathe in, breathe out. Be sure to breathe when you're painting. Everybody wants to hold their breath when they're painting. Look for areas that maybe didn't have enough paint. Be sure that you get enough on there. That's a little thing you can do to make your painting look better. It's okay to have brush strokes that show. It's okay to have the canvas underneath show. But you have to decide what's the look you're trying to get and then do the things that help you with that look. I'm going to rinse my brush out really well. And I'm going to have to put out more white paint now because I got a little crazy there with my blue paint to show you what I mean about that. So how are you doing? Are you having some fun? Painting in that background is a good way to get started. Make sure you breathe and relax. And remember, this is just art. There's no right, no wrong. There's no pass, no fail. This is just you being creative because creativity is fun. And no matter where you live and who you are, creativity is just a great thing to add into your life, to spend a little time with yourself and kind of remember how fun and whimsical you can be, how imaginative you can be. I'm going to switch to a number 8 bright. You could do a 4, you could do a 6 here. I just want a smaller brush that gives me control inside of his head. So see how I'm changing brushes as I'm painting? It helps me maintain control in the painting. That's true for you too. I'm going to do the same thing I did before, which is wet my brush and take off the extra water so things are not crazy with too much water. Like, let me show you what it looks like. See, there's just, I don't know if you can see that, how much water can get into your paint. And then that would just be like not enough acrylic paint, and it could do what's called underbinding, and you don't want that. You want to take off the extra. Now I'm going to take a little of my yellow ochre, yellow oxide. They're calling these different things in the paint lines. But really what you're looking for is a goldish brown color right there. See how I'm getting a nice palomino color? That's a color of horse that you can have. And I'm going to come in and right under the unicorn horn line there, I'm going to just paint in this nice color all around his nose and his eye and up into his ears and all through here. And then I'm going to come back and define his features. So here I am again, pulling out the yellow ochre, coming here and pulling out the white. See how it's just on the tip of the brush? Sometimes I use my brush on the flat. You can see here I'm brushing on the flat, but I'm not getting a nice edge, so I'm going to go on the edge here. The chalk pencil I'm using is blending into my paint a little bit, but it's similar to the color I'm going to use to shade him, so I wasn't too worried about that. But I wouldn't want to have had a graphite or number 2 pencil bleeding through. Interestingly, sometimes as an artist you might. Now I'm going to come try to get a little of my glazing medium, but I want to avoid my blue here so that it doesn't make green. Because if I got some blue in my ochre here, it would make a green. And I am kind of doing a nice curved stroke here. hanging in, painting around the eye. You're like, uh-oh, what's going to happen there? I'm going to make sure that's dry before I try to fix it. You can fix almost anything in acrylic paint if it's dry first. You can do some wet on wet fixes, but mostly you want to let the paint dry or dry it with a hairdryer and then come paint out whatever you're not enjoying in your painting. All right. Just having a blast. Are you having a blast? Tell me what you think of this. I'm interested to know. I am very, very interested to know what you think of this. How you think you're doing. Love to see your paintings. You can share them with me at TheArtSherpa.com or anywhere you can find me on social media, and I'm happy to see them. Just painting that in. Just painting that in. You can see that a little bit of my line is left there, so I don't remember where I put it. Yeah, that's what I'm doing. Just pulling that out. Coming in here in his little nose. The second little nostril here peeking out. That's why there's a little bump there. Some foreshortening. And up the nose. Around. See how he's pretty? He's just a golden palomino. Just a little bit. See? And then up into this ear, which now seems to be dry. We'll know in a minute because when I go to fix it, it should just paint right over. You didn't know acrylic paint could do that, did you? And that's why I'm always telling new artists to just not worry. Once the paint is dry, you can fix anything that's happening in your canvas. You don't have to get stressed out or concerned or feel like you're not doing a good enough job. You know, artwork isn't like that. Just mixing some more of this. And now I'm painting in the neck. Painting in the neck. Painting in the neck. Pretty easy stuff. You having fun? When I go back and forth like that, that's a little bit of a scramble, isn't it? But sometimes that's a nice way to get extra paint off my brush. So I can kind of push it off the brush and into the canvas. I'm covering all the canvas with my paint. Dipping my brush. Getting a little more paint if I need a little more of my blending medium. Getting that. Just making sure I have a nice edge between my fabulous unicorn and the world around him. There we go. Having a great time. Just painting all the rest of this in. So something very important I want to say is that I made a decision about that he'd be this golden color or that he would have a rainbow mane. But you could make a different decision than I do. You could decide that you'd like him to be different colors. And that would be okay. Sometimes when you're learning how to do something, it's hard to know what's okay to do and what's not okay to do. And it's definitely okay in art to play a little bit and put yourself in a painting and to change it up. If you're feeling like, oh, I would love this, but if it just had this, that would be perfect for me. See, I'm blending this here. Then go ahead and make those changes. If you want him exactly like how I made him, then just follow along with exactly what I'm doing. Those two answers are okay. pulling that out. It's all right. It's all right. Coming along the edge here. Just enjoying myself. And I hope you're enjoying yourself. Just taking good care of yourself while you're being creative. All right. Look at him. He's just coming together. Are you coming together? Are you having fun? Now, as I'm going forward, again, I just can't tell you enough that you need to express yourself. That's important for everyone, no matter where you are in life, no matter how old you are in life. Having fun and, showing people who you really are and being your authentic self and being authentically creative and telling your truth, that's a big deal. That's important. We don't do that enough in life. So anywhere along this way, be sure that you're doing that and that you're listening to yourself and that I'm just guiding you through this painting, but you're still being yourself in this painting. It's crazy to do something as individual as a unicorn and not be ourselves while we're creating it. So make sure you're making yourself happy in this creative process. I am going to take a little white over to this red I have over here and get a little of the glazing medium. And I'm going to paint his horn in with this mid-tone color. I'm on the edge of my bristles. I'm dragging along his horn. There we go. There we go. Right there. Right there. There you are. I'm enjoying that. But he could have had any color horn. I could have made any decision, an infinite number of them right there. One is not more right than the other. It's just art. As I'm coming up to his horn, the sharpness of this brush allows me to make a nice fine line. And you can see I get a really sharp point there, and that's really helpful. I am also going to come into his nose with this color, just because it's fun, to give him a slightly pink nose on the inside. So I'm painting that in. Now I'm kind of working this big brush, but at home you can kind of see that I'm struggling here. I probably should have switched to a smaller brush. And if you're struggling on the smaller objects, you should do that as well. You should definitely do that. Let's come up into the ears and add some of this pink color. I'm going to make a little diamond shape that pulls up to the inside of the ear. Just a sliver of it. See, it's not big. It's not big. And if I made it too big, let's say I took it over to here and it felt too big, what could I do? I could dry it. And then just put the gold color I first made on it and then fix it. I will do that a little bit right here. I'll make the pink area too big and on one of these, and then I'll fix it before I put in the main. See how I'm doing that? I made this a little bit too big. It might make me unhappy later, and I might want to refine that down a little bit. I'm going to let that dry, and I'll show you how I get that repaired. I'm going to put this brush down, and I'm going to switch to a smaller brush because I want to paint in the eye. So one of my favorite, I like number 2 and number 4 brights when I'm doing really, really tiny areas. It really helps me paint those. Okay, so I found both brushes. I have a number 4 and a number 2 bright. What if you just had one? Well, then just pick the smaller size that you have. What you want is just a brush that gives you control. It makes this a little bit easier because one doesn't need to be freaking out doing one's relaxation project that you took up to have fun with, right? That would be crazy. So I'm going to take my nice little number 2 here. I'm going to get a little of that blue sky color that I made. And I'm going to come here and sort of refine the little area around his face. See how I'm doing that? Cleaning up that line. This is what I mean about acrylic paint. I saw a little something that was bothering me, and I just fix it because it's now dry, and it will let me do so. And I just make sure that around him that my painting is clean and thought out. And that's my style. Maybe your style is very loose and expressive. that's okay too. Right? That's okay too. So you see me sort of working that around. Just making that a little bit better. And then rinse that out. Wipe that off. And I'm going to work inside his eye. Now his eye is going to be real interesting. I'm going to take a little bit of my black over to my ochre and I'm going to make a yellow gray. And I'm going to come right around his little eye here that I've drawn in. Just a little bit. Like, think of it like a liner. Okay. And then I'm going to, with very soft, and this is very soft pressure, I'm going to make sure there's a little triangle here. Coming out, I'm just going to make this seem darker. I'm going to get a little of my glazing blending liquid here. It's glazing liquid. And this is going to let me feather out this color a little bit around this eye and make him seem more soulful. See, I'm making him more soulful. If you've ever done makeup, this will feel a little bit like blending makeup. Like I just used my fingers, see? It'll feel just like that. Just coming out, shading around the eye a little bit. I'm not getting crazy big around it. I just want to have some depth and definition around his eye. I'm going to wipe my brush off. I'm not even going to worry about rinsing it. And then I'm going to take a little of my blue and I think a smidge of my black. It's going to make this very deep color. And with that blue-black, I'm going to come inside this space. And yeah, I'm going to paint a light blue eye, but to do that, I need to paint this dark color first. Isn't that sort of interesting how that works? Because acrylic painting is about layering. And I think that's where a lot of people get frustrated when they're painting it. It seems like in oil painting that it's just like a brush stroke and it's done. But with acrylic painting, it's about building up layers. A lot of times. Not all the time. Every technique exists in acrylic. But for painting like this, you're going to build up the layers. You can kind of see I'm pushing this paint into my canvas. Then I'm using the edge of my bristles. I'm just making that as easy as I can. I might even take this up a little bit and into the corner just a little bit. That's really nice. I like that. Now, interestingly enough, I'm going to come over to my red. I haven't even rinsed my brush. What? That's crazy. And I'm going to get this little gray color here. And I'm going to make sure that I've got a nice shadow happening. But I don't want it to be black. I want it to be slightly rosy gray. Just a little bit in the nostrils. I'm pulling down, but I'm going to need a highlight right here. See? Like the light shining in the nostril. Not bad. We didn't do bad at all. We're going to let that dry for a second. We're going to pull out our number 8 again. Right here. I'm going to take a smidge, some scotch. Think of this like chili pepper. See how little is on my brush? Over to my ochre. And I'm making this deep color. I'm going to grab a little of my glazing medium. And just along the bottom of his jaw, very, very lightly. Oh, I'm just barely pressing down. And then I'm going to curve up. I'm curving up, creating this shadow. And I'm going to get a little more glazing liquid so that it's easy to do. It's blending. There we go, coming along here. At the neck, I'm going to show you what to do if you don't have any glazing liquid. There's always another way to do something in art, which is one of the things that makes it fun. I'm going to do a little bit of the shadow under his little jaw there. Take a little bit on the mouth. Just shade that lip. See how I'm coming underneath the lip? I'm just shading it up just a little bit. A little bit right there. Just shading. A wipe off. Get the glazing. Just blend this out so that he's got some implied shape. I can come back with a little bit of my oxide and white into this line and create a nice blend there. This is just something to practice, something to work on. You don't want to get it too dark, right? You don't want to get it too dark. See, it's not dark. So I'm coming back with the background color and just blending it back in. And I'm going to, while I've got that background color, I'm going to show you fixing the eye up here. I'm going to show you me doing that. I mean the ear, that's not an eye, that's an ear. So I'm coming back with the color that I had before. Too much glazing. There we go. Need enough pigment on there to do it. And I'm going to just paint over where I thought I had too much of the pink. Isn't that nice? It's like I didn't even have a boo-boo at all. Just paint it right now. And you can do that anytime. Anytime. So let me show you here, if you didn't have glazing medium, what you might do. So I'm going to pull out a little of the black into my ochre. I'm going to get a little water, but not a lot. A little, because I showed you what happened if you have too much water. I'm just trying to thin the paint a little bit. And here I am blending it out. Now what I'm doing is I'm letting what's underneath my brush show through. This is called dry brushing, and this is another way of shading or blending that you can do in acrylic paint. See how I'm just light pressure and it's still creating that, but I haven't used the glazing medium. I just want this to be a slightly darker ochre than his body. And I'm just coming there using the dry brush. Just dry brushing. Also is perfectly okay to do. And how I get this where it feels like it's blended is I'm just dusting. I'm just dusting. I'm barely using any pigment, and it's just almost antiquing the canvas, and that's how that works. Isn't that easy? Right there under the nose, create a shadow. Just slightly. So it's not very black. If I did it very black, it would seem like he was covered in soot. It's just a little bit. And I can do that on his neck here, and that's okay. I'm coming to do some glazing though, right here, if I want to, which I do. I think it's important that you know that there's just so many ways to make this happen. You know, we don't actually need to work his neck that much because so much mane is going to come forward, but a little bit of shading is going to make a big difference on how he feels later. Let's come and get just a little more white into our mixture. I'm going to put out a little more of my medium. I just get at a craft store, a local craft store. And I'm going to just make sure that at the top of his face is just a little bit lighter. And I'm also going to just do light brush stroke, just blending these two areas together. And you can see how the layers are starting to help me. Come on the lip and around and make sure that he's okay. I think sometimes when you're, introduced to painting, that's the thing that's the most mysterious, is the fact that it all layers. See, I'm putting another highlight here. I can put one at the top of the ears. One of the great ones that can really help is, interestingly enough, right here between this eye and this ear. Horse people right now are like, oh, yay. And always at the forehead here. A little bit lighter. Now let's do something with the horn, real similar. Okay? I'm going to take the number 4 that I have, and I'm going to get a little bit of white into a little bit of red. I'm going to save that because I might shade my ears a little bit too. And I'm just going to make sure that I've got a nice little highlight at the top of my horn. So you can see the bead. There's just a tint of red there and everything. And I'm going to come up along the top. Just like this. Just come along the top. And just pull this down. Not all the way to the bottom. See how I'm leaving the bottom as it is? And I'm letting the paint sort of taper off. That's sometimes where this brush being a firmer filament, in other words, not very soft, helps me. And then when I get near the end, I have to actually start dusting the stroke to get the effect. So, but what I'm trying to do is make it lighter up here and darker there, and that creates a little shape to the horn. I'm going to wipe off my brush just with a towel. I'm going to get that darker red color that I made earlier with a little bit of black. And I'm going to come right here, the bottom of my ear, and just dust that a little bit so there's a shadow. So that's how we're getting some shapes. And while we're letting him rest, let's make this eye pop. Rinse out your brush, get your number 2 out, and we're going to just make this fabulous. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to get my Just Black, and this is just so I know where it is. And I'm going to come in the center here. And this is it's not a dot. It's actually, his magical eye is more of a long cylindrical shape. I like to taper it down a little bit, because that's how their eyes are. They're more open. And then I'm going to, right underneath the lid, come with this dark, dark, dark color. And then right here. See, just to define that, I'm going to rinse that out real, real well. And now I'm going to pull a little of my blue out. I'm going to grab a little of my white. Definitely going to get some of that because it's so dry. Underneath here, I'm going to just add this blue. You can see I'm just tapping and pulling this out. Right at the front, and tapping, pulling this out. Just making a nice, awesome eye. I'm letting it stay dark at the outer edges, and if you lose your dark, you can come back and just get your blue and make sure that it's dark at the base here. We're shading. If you think of this as like maybe a glass ball or something, we're shading that. And I definitely want a shadow off my lid. Right, so I'll come get that blue-black color I had from earlier. I'm going to make sure that stays there, this nice shadow off my lid. And then I'm going to take, I have this very, very light blue I made earlier, but you can make it again by just taking a little bit of blue over to your white, and you want it to just be almost white. It's just a tinted white. You can see that. Keep using my glazing liquid to keep my stuff from drying. I'm going to just tap a little bit of this highlight around here. Let's see how it's just, there he is. A little bit of this dark color back. Alright, have that going now. Now that that's there, and we have that beautiful eye, we're going to let that dry for a bit. I'm going to come back in and just real quick make sure that his little lip has a little of this black and a little bit of this yellow ochre right here. So we can see that. Doesn't have to be dark. A lot of people would want to put that black, but if you put that straight black, then it flattens it. Maybe just a little bit right there. Just kind of define that muzzle and make that more expressive, right? So he's got some nice shading. His horn has some nice shading. let's put in the mane. And so the mane I'm going to do in the rainbow, and I'm going to totally follow the rainbow. And I'm going to show you how to do the blends between the hair, and we're going to blow the hair out into the sky, which is going to be great, and make it all tendrily and wispy. But again, it could be any color that you want. I'm going to go back into my number 4 brights. I like my brights because they give me nice sharp edges for the hair. I'm going to wet my brush. I'm going to change my water right now. See this? I just have a new clean cup of water because I want my mane to be bright. And if I paint with dirty water, it might dull my colors, and I don't want that for my rainbow mane. I don't want that for your rainbow mane. I want everybody's rainbow to be as bright and shiny and glowing all the way up into space. So the trick would be to change the water out now. I'm going to dry this to make sure I'm ready to put the mane on. Something we have to make a decision about right now is how we want to finish out the horn. And there's sort of a traditional look where the horn feels spiraled or twisted, and there's this really cool kind of line effect. And I think a lot of you are going to want to do it. So I'm inclined to show you how you could do it. That way you can have it for yourself at home if you want it that way. I'm going to take my number 4 and get it slightly bright. And I'm, interestingly enough, going to get a little of my blue over to my red. And it's going to make a weird color. You're thinking it's going to make purple, but it's not. It's going to darken my red, but not as much as, say, the black did. And I added a little water to it to thin it out. I could have used the glazing medium. And I'm going to come here at this base, and I'm going to make a little line that goes up at a diagonal. And another little line that goes up at a diagonal. As I get closer to the tip, those will come closer together, and it'll imply that this horn has a little spiral. You could do this with just red or black, whatever you wanted to do. And I'm going to just shade this a little bit right here. Just see I'm sort of scrubbing that out. You don't have to do that, and if I don't like that, I'll take that out. And I don't really like it, so I'm going to take it out. Yes, I am. I'm going to take that right out. I'm going to let that dry, or I'm going to dry that, and I'm going to paint that out. So the idea here is it doesn't really matter where you have mistakes or bobbles or missteps in any painting. Once the acrylic is dry, you can paint right on over it. I'm going to pull out a little of my white paint, get a little of my little red here, and come back and just paint that right out because I don't like it. It doesn't make me happy. See how I was able to just totally repair that, and it was just no big deal? Everything in art is like this. So always, always feel relaxed in your painting. Always, always feel relaxed in your doodling, anything that you're doing, because this is just art, and there's always a way to fix any bobble. I'm going to get my brush primed, pull out a little of my red paint. If you're painting from a kit or an off-brand student paint, you may want to, on the rainbow, add white and make it a pastel mane. Because if it is, the white will help the coverage. Because that's one of the things that can happen to you when you're painting is that your paint doesn't have enough coverage. I'm going to come straight from the... Look at this. I got too much paint on my brush, like we talked about. I'm going to wipe it off. Wipe it off here. And then reload it on the edge. Come right here, planting this right between the ears, and then I'm going to just, see that? I'm adding a little glazing liquid because what's happened is my paint has gotten dry in my studio. It's doing what's called skinning, and when it starts to skin, it becomes difficult to handle. We've got a nice load there. That's a perfect bead. I'm going to just paint a blowing tendril. Right, that's what I want, is a blowing tendril to start with. And if I'm not enjoying how this brush is treating me, which I'm not, I'm going to switch to his friend who will maybe treat me better. And I may put out some more red. that isn't so dried out. And I may have to do that with the yellow. That's one of the hard things about putting my paint out all in the beginning is that, yeah, that's much better. See how it's not glopping and causing trouble? And you can kind of see the skin to that. That just creates a problem, and that costs money when that happens. So I'm going to just, oh, I love that much better. Both the brush and the paint are working with me now. In art, when you've done it for a while, you come to recognize that your tools can impact your results a great deal, and a lot of times that the problems that you're having are not that you're not good at art, but that the tools are not performing the way you'd like. So I'm just blowing this. How I'm doing that is I press hard, I press hard, I press hard, and then as I come to draw it out, I just lighten my pressure, and the sharpness of the brush is letting me do that. You know, you can put a little white in there if you need to. That'll improve the coverage a lot. And I take a little bit down there. Maybe a little bit like this, just a little fine thing. Now I'm going to make some that come here in the red. Just behind the ear. And you can see I'm making these little S strokes. They're kind of like an S. They wave back and forth. And how I get the fine lines by lifting and lightening the pressure on my brush to make this feel more like hair. And then if I want it to seem like it's more full right there, then I go to the flat and I paint that in. See how I can do there? Now I can take a little of my red over to my yellow, and I'm going to get a very, very nice bright orange. And I'm going to help that out by adding some white to it. You can see my brush is overloading, so you see I push down and get it off. Get that paint off. I'm going to pick some up on the tip of my brush. If it overloads, pick it up on the tip, like that. There you go. I'm going to come right here, over, up over. I want this to sort of look blended. The orange can be a little more trouble to get good coverage from. I'm going to definitely need to put out some of my yellow paint because it's also doing that same thing to me. I'll put it back here, close to its friend. Rinsing out my brush. So yellow is one of the ones that can give you more trouble with coverage. Definitely quality helps. If it's a quality paint, it will have more pigment. But again, like what if that's not in your budget, right? Well, then what you do is you would just add white and make everything pastel. The white will have enough pigment in it to cover, so you don't get the blue showing through in the main. All right. A little more orange here. So many times we blame ourselves for stuff that just doesn't have anything to do with us. It's just not our fault, like other people being mad or, you know, all kinds of things where we hold ourselves accountable and it's really some outside thing that isn't us. I see that in art students all the time. They blame themselves for what's going on in the art when really it was just that paint didn't have a lot of pigment in it. Don't be hard on yourself. Be easy. I'm just blending that wonderful, isn't that a nice fiery orange? You could just use any orange that you had. I love pulling down little tendrils and letting open spaces exist. Now a neat trick I like to do is to blow some mane in front of mane I've already painted in. So I'm going to grab some white, take it over to visit my friend yellow. See there? Getting a nice ducky color. It's still quite yellow. I'll load up my brush. I'm going to come here and I'm going to do an interesting thing. I'm going to blow this little bit of mane in front. And that creates a lot of energy and dimension in what I've got going on. Blowing in front. Layering up the colors. So they're not like a comb, they're not in order, they're not any of those things. I see a lot of my blue sky is shining through, so I can sit there and take advantage of this yellow. And look how I layer it over, so it works well. I'm going to put out a little more white. So my white is skinning. It's very hot where I paint. I don't know what to tell you except that it's very hot where I paint. Rinsing out my brush as it's becoming cumbersome. Pulling in a little of this yellow. The yellow, even though I paint a very good yellow, often will have to have a little white to it to cover over very strong colors. Just will. And then I can come with some just straight yellow and brighten some of that up. And take a little hair there, see? Isn't that nice? Little errant flyaways that can happen. Now I'm going to get a little yellow into my green. It's going to make a very bright green. I'm going to for sure need some white because of the yellow. Loading my brush up. I'm going to just, woo, look at me, I just went crazy there. Right over with that line. I went down and back and over and blew right in front of those other, give your beautiful unicorn a wind machine. I'm going to just make this nice tendril. And this is something that can be super frustrating when you're new to painting, is how to get the mane the way you want it, or everything that you have going on here. How do you get that the way that you want it? Just painting that in. I'm leaving some of the neck to show, so this hair is more exciting and some of it's darker. So I pull out this green. You can kind of see how I'm doing on this brush. It's just a hot mess. Look at that. And yet, by just letting it be streaky and like it is on the canvas, look what can happen. Look what magic can happen. Some pretty cool magic right there. I'm going to wipe off my brush because it's getting a little bit overloaded. Get a little yellow, a little green. Probably going to need a little white. Just making sure that I've got a nice little section here. Green. It really reads, because then it'll feel like a rainbow. And you want it to feel like a rainbow. Isn't he looking nice? How are you feeling? Are you loving this? It's just kind of fun, isn't it? All right. Rinse, 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 rinse your brush. Now, one of the fun things you can do is you can take your pure green and a little of your blue, right? I'm going to do see the press out, how I'm pressing out and I'm loading. Hopefully it's not too, I'm going to have to use some glazing just to make sure I've got enough flow going here. You may not, hopefully you don't. And I'm going to make this bridge color between where the blue and violet are going to be. My favorite color is purple. That's my favorite. I don't know what your favorite is. Love to know. I'm going to get a little white right here. Look at that. Nice little white. Just making sure I've got a nice bridge here between these two colors. A little green, a little blue, a little white, and a little blend. Just along the edge here. Perfect. Rinse out. And now I'm going to just pull out a little of my blue. It's okay if I get a little white to it because I want it to be bright. And sometimes with phthalo, if you're painting with phthalo, it needs a little white to show off its brightness. I'm pressing out the excess paint. And I'm going to make sure I have a nice blue area right here. Nice blue area. Just loading that right on there. So you can see that as your paint dries, it's much more likely to creep up your brush. The fixes for that are to put out less paint and use it up more often and then put it out. Mist it during the painting process. Glazing medium can help, like what I'm using. Some of this here. The glazing can really help me because it prevents that skinning. But I still have to, at the end of this painting, you're seeing I'm having to definitely work with my paint a little bit more just to get it to do what I want. But I'm just pressing and letting little bits of tendrils come out. A fabulous 80s rock band hair on him. Now the next fun color mix I'm going to do is I'm going to take a little of my blue over to my purple. See, I'm pulling it out. Wants to creep, but I'm going to push it off. Bring a little white over here. Look at that beautiful color. And I'll take this to the edge of the canvas. Thinning that out a little bit because it's so gloppy and dried out from the studio. Thinking right now, how do I fix that for the next time? That's something that you do as an artist. You're always like, okay, that's what I'm dealing with today, but how do I fix that next time? What do I do next time to have a different experience with that tool? Just little tendrils coming out. Pressing down, lightening up, and then coming off there. Alright, just keep pulling this up here, letting the purple be darker right there. We've got the lighter purple. Just having fun. Pulling that paint down. Get that nice purple going. A little bit of the white, so it's like super light right there between them. So I'm making the nice light space between these two. And then look what I'm going to do here. I'm going to go, woo! Just a little tendril off that way. Doesn't that really make the mane feel like it's alive? As if it's magical. I'm going to come down about the halfway space here. Just make sure your paint doesn't creep up your brush too much. That's going to be the hard part at the end of a project, or you've got to put out new paint. I try to make sure that when I'm doing these, that I don't always necessarily just put out new paint, because you might not be able to do that at home, and I want to see what you guys might be dealing with or struggling with, or what might be going on with your materials. I'm just doing that. So you can see how I'm correcting for this glopping paint is I'm adding a little water, I'm using a little gel medium, I'm wiping off my brush often, and that's what fixes it for me. I am really happy with that part of the mane. Now, one thing that he needs, in my opinion, is a little more character up here in the forelock. So I'm going to rinse out my brush super well. Super well. I'm going to go back with just a little of the red, because I felt like that was light over there. And you can see I'm just going to strengthen that up so that it's a little more pronounced. There we go. So sometimes 2 coats is necessary, and never feel bad if you feel like you got to go back for 2 coats. I have to put a reflection in his eye, and then I have to add some magic. You should always add a little magic if you can. I like to add a little magic where I can. I'm going to put out a little soft-bodied white. In this case, you could just put out more of your white paint. And I'm going to get a detail brush. That's a brush with a very small refined point. See this little detail right here? It's got a very fine point. And I'm going to just put a little paint on the tip of my brush. Hopefully you can see that. It's just like on the tip. And I'm going to add a little reflection here, and then I'm going to come along under the eye and just add a soft little series of dashes where he would have a little moisture reflecting on his eye, and that's going to make his eye seem a little bit more special. And then I'm going to do something really interesting. I'm going to add the magic. So I feel like in life, magic is super, super important. You know, having a little belief in things, having a little hope in things. I'm going to take another one of my number 4s. So I'm going to add a little glitter, and hopefully you might want to add a little glitter in your life. I don't know if you're going to want to add a little glitter in your life, but I'm going to take a little gel medium. You could take a little white glue. I like gel medium because I keep it in my studio. And I'm going to glitter up his horn, and I'm going to put a nice coat of this on there. Now, gel medium won't hurt my paint. By the way, neither will white glue. White glue will dry clear. It's not a good varnish by any means, but it works as a glue. I've got that. And while that's still wet, I'm going to blow a little glitter on his horn. Because I don't know about the unicorn lovers in your life, but the unicorn lovers in my life believe in sparkles. And it's going to stick wherever the paint is wet, and it's going to stick to that horn and everything else in my studio. Those of you that don't enjoy the ever-presence of glitter should do this very neatly and maybe not as dramatically as me, but I have the freedom in my studio to just make a wish and add a little glitter, a little magic, a little something special. And I hope you are feeling special and glitterific in your life. I hope that you love your rainbow mane unicorn and he feels special to you. And I hope that if you are a mystical, fabulous creature, you don't ever hide that you just be who you are in your life and shine as brightly as you can. I want to see you at the easel really soon. Be good to yourselves. Bye-bye.